Hi, I'm Steve Morgan, founder of Cybersecurity Ventures and editor-in-chief at Cybercrime magazine. I'm here today with Scott Schober, CEO at Berkeley Varitronic Systems, an engineering think tank providing wireless security solutions since 1972. Scott, great to have you with us today.
Yeah, great to be on here with you, Steve.
So, Scott, your company helps many types of organizations with cybersecurity. One of those are prisons. What are some of the problems that contraband cell phones pose in prisons?
Well, contraband cell phones, it's an ongoing problem. It's been around for years, but especially as phones have gotten smaller and they do a lot more. Because now a phone is like a mini computer. You could do everything with it, and it's got Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and email, SMS, text. They pose a great danger and they pose a great risk to security personnel everywhere from the administration within a correctional facility to even the staff. There's a growing need to use technology to combat technology, and that's what we're hearing continually for all the prisons that we deal with.
So, Scott, if cell phones in inmate hands are so dangerous, why don't they just jam the cellular signal?
You know, that is a great question, and I thought about that a lot. Unfortunately, when you look at the cell phone and how it works with having towers around, it's actually licensed spectrum. So what does that mean? It means that the carriers, the Verizon, Sprint, AT&T, T-Mobile, they actually pay money to the FCC and the organizations, and they own that chunk of spectrum. And that allows us to communicate mobile phones, and we have plans for it. So therefore, if you jam it's tantamount of theft of spectrum. So if you turn a jammer on, it's actually illegal. You can be fined in many cases up to $100,000 if a correctional facility was jamming a cell phone coverage. And why is that so dangerous? Well, another side of the coin is you have to think about communications within a correctional facility is essential. If there's a riot that breaks out, gang activity, any type of crimes or fights or violence, they need to be able to communicate seamlessly to call for backup, to call in, whatever equipment is needed to stop whatever is going on instantly. Now, if cell phones are being jammed, jammers tend to transmit over a wide bandwidth. And unfortunately, it not only knocks off cell phone calls, it also knocks off safety equipment. You can't make a 911 call. Patrol officers, security guards, management, they can't communicate with one another, and that could be treacherous. It could mean lives. So it is illegal and against the law at all to use any jammers. And really, you can't even legally buy jammers. A lot of people buy jammers. There's estimated about 100,000 jammers come into the United States every single month, and that's mostly mass-produced in China. But just because they come in and people buy them doesn't mean that it's illegal. It's legal. It's actually illegal.
So, Scott, how are the inmates getting the cell phones smuggled into the prisons?
That's the part that amazes me, Steve. They're really, they say they've got time on their hands. They come up with some really interesting ways to get cell phones smuggled into prisons. I've talked to a lot of different prisons, and some of the common methods that make me chuckle a little bit, they actually will sew them inside of a basketball. And what they'll do is somebody outside of the prison will take a basketball and they'll give a hook shot, throw it over the wall. It'll land in the common area of the yard. And then they secretly take that basketball, slice it open, pull the phone out, pull batteries out of it, pull chargers out. That's common. They've duct taped cell phones to cats. And they'll, again, throw a cat over the wall and they'll pull the phones off of it. It'll be a visitor. It could be a family member. It could be a corrupt lawyer. It could be with staff. The average guard in a prison may make, high $20,000 to $30,000 a year. However, they could get in payment for smuggling contraband cell phone in excess of $100,000 cash per year. So again, you could see how valuable cell phones are and how tempting it might be for a corrupt staff member to kind of turn their head, smuggle a bunch in, and get cash payments. It's a very corrupt system, unfortunately. And I know that correction facilities get frustrated when I say that. They do their best to counter the problem, but the problem still persists because many times the prisoners run the prison over the administration. And it's a constant cat and mouse game, back and forth, fighting to keep out contraband cell phones. I've even heard of cases where it's been smuggled inside of sealed food cans, peanut butter jars. They put them in a Ziploc bag, stick it in the middle of peanut butter, smooth over the top, and the peanut butter that comes in, you go to the commissary, and they take the cell phones out of them. So very, very craftily ways that they use to smuggle them in, and I'm constantly learning new things. And one of the latest has been drones. They'll literally fly a drone over, and they've got pinchers that they equip them with, and they just drop cell phones. Somebody catches it, puts it in their pocket, and they smuggle it in and start using it.
Unbelievable. So,
yeah.
Scott, you were out at the RSA conference earlier this year, and you interviewed Ginger, the FBI cyber dog. So let me ask you about, these dogs. They're trained to sniff out, I think, things like contraband, electronics, cell phones. Could they sniff out cell phones in prisons?
Yeah, absolutely. And they do an amazing job. I never want to discount the ability of a dog and their ability to sniff and hone in on specific things. It does take training. It may take years of training. So a dog like Ginger had to have very specific training to identify very specific things, and in that case, trained to pull out contraband cell phones. Not all dogs can do that, so it takes certain breeds and certain training ability. But the bigger problem is that it's expensive. To have a dog, you have to have a trainer, and you have to be able to routinely go through a prison. Every prison can't afford a cell phone sniffing dog. And so it's taking time, staff time, it takes a trainer, it takes a specialized dog. So the process, even though it's very effective, it can be challenging because all the budgets out there are very tight for prisons, so they can't really do it effectively. So instead, what we've done is to work in parallel where they can get dogs, create equipment that actually can pick up on the radio frequency signal so you can hone in and find when actually inmates are using contraband cell phones, catch them in the act basically to cut back on it.
What about traditional metal detectors? Can they be used to detect and locate phones on prisoners, visitors, lawyers, and others?
Metal detectors have limited ability to pick up on a cell phone. Why? Cell phones are not a lot of metal in them. A lot of people assume, well, it's got to be metal in there. There's a lot of pieces in a cell phone that have to be made to keep it strong and also keep it light. And what is that typically? It might be aluminum. It might be specialty metals in there, different alloys and things. But basically, there's not a lot of metal that it picks up on. A lot more plastic, glass, the battery. So what prisoners or bad guys or corrupt lawyers, corrupt visitors have learned is there's certain sweet spots on a metal detector that will never pick up a mobile phone. You can cup a mobile phone midway through your body. I probably shouldn't tell people this because then they'll know how to sneak mobile phones through, but it's a reality. It's a known thing. And you could walk through just about any metal detector and get through. The other thing is metal detectors are not very effective from the knees down. Why? Because there's a lot of metal in people's shoes, boots, buckles, buttons, things like that. So they desensitize or tune them down there. So bad guys know this, and they'll hide a mobile phone in their sock, in the bottom of a shoe, and they'll find means of sneaking it in. And again, it could be a corrupt lawyer, it could be a visitor, family member, gang member, whoever comes into the facility, they know this, and they'll use this to sneak through the metal detector. So really specialized technology had to be developed to effectively combat the problem of contraband cell phones coming into the front door of prisons and getting through metal detectors all the time.
So Scott, tell us about your company, BVS, what you've developed to combat this growing threat, and how does it work?
Yeah, a little more than 10 years ago, actually, we were contacted by different prisons, correctional facilities, especially a lot of work we've done with the Federal Bureau of Prisons that oversees much of the work throughout the United States as far as tools and technologies to combat it. And we were given a task to actually develop small, effective tools that could pick up on the transmitting radio frequency coming out of a cell phone. It could be 3G, third generation technology, 4G, the fourth generation, which we're currently in with mostly LTE frequencies, on into the new 5G. We hear a lot about 5G build out. That's starting to happen and start to come in with new higher frequencies. And that's exactly what our cell phone detection tools do. We pick up on the transmitted radio signals that go from a mobile phone to a cell tower. And we usually couple that in with some peak signal intensity, as well as direction finding capabilities so we could hunt it down. A common method that they'll use is actually take a vehicle with tinted windows. They'll go around the perimeter of a prison, and they'll actually use our tool and aim it at particular windows, and usually see narrow windows for all the exterior prison cells. And if they see a high signal strength intensity there, they could say, oh, the third floor up, seventh row over, there's a prison cell with a cell phone transmitting, and they'll take an extraction team, they'll launch them, and usually catch the criminal in the activity of talking on the cell phone. And that's often how it will be done, as well as a lot of other clever methods where we'll actually embed technology into common things. It could be a box of Joe, it could be on a person, or other common tool bags and things that they'll be used throughout the correction facility. Actually inside is hidden technology. It's our cell phone detectors that they could use and get alerts if they're near any cell phone activity.
Well, Scott, this was great. I really appreciate you joining us today. I learned more than I did know for sure about cybersecurity in prisons. Hope we can do this again.
Excellent. Thanks so much for having me on there. Stay safe, Steve.